So I just have to say, that was the most impressive big get to know you that I've ever seen. After, at least, we haven't been doing that from the beginning, but maybe 12 years or so. And thank you, because it's, it sometimes takes a little too long. So thank you very much. Welcome, David Solomon.
Thank you.
This is a special place for a guy to be here.
I'm very pleased to be here. When Lloyd asked me to step in for him today, I was hoping I'd have a chance to DJ for everybody, but unfortunately, more serious things to do. But really, I'm really pleased to be here. We're all very proud of our partnership, with this event over a long period of time. The issues that you're all discussing are super important to all of us at the firm. I've got 2 young daughters who are just entering the workforce, and I know that some of the discussion, the convening of all these women that have had so much success to help others move it all forward. Hopefully I'll have an impact on them and their careers too, so I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, great. Terrific. So David is a very appropriate person to sub for Lloyd. Lloyd actually tried, I know, very, very hard to make his calendar work, and he loves this event.
He really loves this.
He really loves this event. I know that. And so David is president and co-CEO of Goldman Sachs now, after Gary Cohn went off to the White House. David moved into this position. David has been with Goldman Sachs since 1999. We've just met. And the Goldman people, and I know Lloyd too, thinks of you as kind of the culture guy and the diversity guy. So what does that mean?
Well, I'm not sure what that means, but I'm happy to be thought of that way, because in the context of our organization and things we think about, culture is very important, diversity is very important. We are a human capital organization. We're a professional services firm. Our biggest asset is our people. We're always focused on trying to deliver for our clients, and without great people, we can't do that. In order to have great people, you've got to have a great organization. The world's incredibly competitive. People want to work in a diverse workforce. They want to work with interesting, smart people. They want to work in a culture where you're investing in people.
Okay, we all know that. We all know that. That's why these women are here.
Absolutely.
So you personally, David, how do you live that?
Well, I think you've got to live it in different ways, and I think we were just talking about it briefly, in the back. As a leader in today's world, you've got to show a variety of different sides to yourself. You've got to kind of personalize who you are. You've got to lead in the organization. Business is tough and it's competitive, but we all, in the context of who we are, we've got to work hard. We've got to build relationships in our workforce, and we've got to show the other side of who we are as people.
So what's the other side of you?
I've got all sorts of passions away from work, and somehow I try to balance them like we all do and find time to be really good in my professional stuff, but really committed to other things.
So David's a DJ. David's a DJ. For those of you who don't know, he goes by the name DJ D-Sol. And he spins records on the weekends in the Hamptons and in the Bahamas.
Variety of different places.
Yeah.
Just a hobby, but just a hobby.
Be proud of it, David.
I'm very proud of it. In fact, it's something I'm passionate about. What's interesting to me is that this is something that I've done for a number of years. I did it because I became interested in music when music was digitizing. I always, loved albums, loved music, but the digitization of music and the fact that music is consumed differently allows you to play with it, absorb it, learn about it in different ways. That kind of got me into it. I started DJing about 3-4 years ago because it seemed like a very cool thing. I didn't know anything about club music. I looked at my kids, what they were doing, and all of a sudden it's kind of blown up as a fun thing to do. But I do it once a month. It's a hobby. But what's interesting, tying it back to the workforce and what we all do as leaders, is looking at the reaction as this has kind of come out to the people who work for us, and kind of recognizing I might get up every morning, I look in the mirror, I see myself a certain way, but all the people in the organization don't see me that way. And there's an intimidation level, there's a fear. This has been a very humanizing thing. And the response that I've gotten from people in sharing their own passions and their own interests and things that they're committed to, has been really, really important. You recognize we all work in these organizations. We have lots of people who work for us that every day are committed to our cause from a business perspective, but at the same point, they have all their personal interests and passions, and they want to be embraced. They want to have room for that. And we as leaders can lead them in business, but also help them feel the confidence and the ability to pursue things that are important and find balance in their life. Very, very important.
So before we bring out the winners, and this very much ties in, because The three women you'll meet are all about using their power beyond their job descriptions and their platforms and thinking about themselves in broader terms and what more they can do. But I need, in these couple of minutes that we have just with you, to ask you a couple of questions. The global economy right now is kind of booming, isn't it?
It's chugging along pretty good.
Yeah.
Certainly better than any of us expected if you went back, 12, 18 months ago.
So what is your biggest worry?
Well, my biggest worry, there are lots of worries. Whenever you get into a pattern where markets are chugging along pretty well, economies are growing, there's a tendency for people to move further out the risk spectrum. I kind of look at it as greed and fear, and people move out more toward the greed side. And so we've been in this environment with massive monetary policy around the world for a long time. The economic engine of the world has definitely improved. I'd say it's growing nicely. I wouldn't say it's booming, but it's certainly growing better than we expected. And so as that happens, there's a tendency for people to get more complacent. I think there's complacency. Just simple metric. You look at the stock market, since 2011, S&P earnings have grown 30%, but the multiple has grown 85%. And so that doesn't mean that it can't continue for a period of time, but there's no question people are pretty complacent, relaxed, moving out the risk curve. You can see it in a variety of asset classes. I wouldn't say that this couldn't go on for a period of time. In fact, if you asked me in the distribution of outcomes, I think it's a better chance we continue to chug along like this for a period of time. But I do think, and I've listened to certain investors, Howard Marks is a very prominent investor. He said something that really resonates with me. If you're an investor, you still have to be invested right now, but you have to be increasingly cautious.
Mm-hmm. One other question before we bring out the women. You are sort of Silicon Valley is kind of you're the guy connected to Silicon Valley.
There are lots of us in the firm, and there's so much that's exciting that's going on in Silicon Valley that it's an important part of business change for everyone.
You spend a lot of time out there.
Spend a lot of time out there, for sure.
Right now, Silicon Valley is dealing with two things that Wall Street has dealt with over the last decade or so. Diversity issues, women, and regulation. Quickly, what is the best advice that you would have for your friends in Silicon Valley for dealing with the problems that they're having now?
So, all businesses run the cycle of ups and downs and pressures from these things. On diversity, I don't have a great piece of advice. What I would just say to add some perspective is that we've been wrestling, at Goldman Sachs, we've been wrestling with these issues for a long time, for decades. We've made progress, but we've still got a long way to go, a long, long way to go. A lot of the big tech companies you're talking about, you look at Amazon, Facebook, Google, these are companies that are 20 years old or less. They've had a very short time. We started wrestling with these issues before these companies were founded. And so in the context of this, they're now wrestling with a bunch of these issues. So what do you tell them? I tell them keep wrestling. Okay? Yeah. Keep wrestling. Make it a priority. It's got to start with leadership. Leadership has to live it, but it takes a long time. And you've got to make progress, and you've got to be aspirational, and you have to push. But you have to put it in the context of the fact that you're building a culture around an organization, and these things take time. And it's not going fast enough. None of us are satisfied with how quickly it goes, but they'll make progress. We all have to keep making progress. And it's convening people like this, continuing to talk about these issues that helps it along, but it's a process. And so there's no great piece of advice other than focus, lead from the top, talk about it, live it, and try to do the best you can to move things forward.